Thank you, Laura. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity for us to launch our working paper on emerging industries in Jamaica. The Growth Inducement Program undertook this research between April 2020 and March 2021 with the objective to identify local emerging industries and the necessary institutional support to facilitate their development. Emerging industries is understood as a group of businesses formed around a new product or idea that is in the early stages of development and has high growth and market potential, where the majority of the growth is yet to be materialized. In undertaking this study, we attempted to benchmark to other international studies. Initially, we sought to use national accounting classifications and data. However, we found that typically emerging industries are not captured by national statistics, but rather parameters are used to identify the number of firms, market size, employment, and value added at the micro level. Other studies have used firm capital raising, investment, patenting data, and sector growth potential to identify emerging industries. Our study was limited by the lack of data, such data as we just named. Instead, we use PIOJ industry prioritization and information from business facilitation stakeholders to make inferences. We continue to advocate for more data to support policy and industry development. So just to jump right into it, we know that Jamaica between 2010 and 2020 undertook major fiscal and structural reforms, which prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, we started seeing where they were bearing fruit through macroeconomic stability, increased business confidence, and increased investment. However, we were not seeing the level of growth that is desired. And as such, this paper seeks to suggest that a key driver of growth could be economic diversification, where we look to move up the value chain of existing industries and create new sectors. The study briefly looked at the global economy, where we try to identify high-performing economies. We found that there were key factors that support their growth, particularly a pro-growth policy agenda of industrialization that directly targets increased productivity and real wages to boost demand, as well as the presence of large companies driving growth. Other factors included capital accumulation, whereas these economies were enabled by high levels of investment and domestic savings, which allowed them to tap into financial sources such as pension fund schemes and invest in areas such as infrastructure, which drive their growth. We also saw those economies being able to attract large amounts of foreign direct investment to fuel their growth. China, which has been the world's fastest growing economy, has been very strategic in their creation of 5-year plans. In those plans, they identify and target specific sectors. We also look at India, which is projected by the IMF to overtake China in terms of GDP growth in the near future. They are also pushing the growth of emerging sectors and high-level demand from both domestic and international markets to fuel their growth. We strongly believe that Jamaica's economy could benefit significantly from strategic industrial repositioning into new growth industries that are demand-driven. The study also looked at the policy framework currently exists to drive Jamaica's growth. We saw where our last cohesive documented approach to driving industry was through a national industrial policy implemented between 1996 and 2010. This policy focused on building international competitiveness and creating diversification through 5 strategic industries and through a cluster approach. Now, the findings. Well, we must point out that the emergence of new industries or sectors in Jamaica is usually dependent on the assimilation of global technologies, likewise the integration into global value chains, or the creation of new products, services, or ideas that are demand driven. The MIIC, without outlining a mechanism for prioritization, they listed international financial services, medical cannabis and hemp, bamboo, and the creative industries as new and exciting opportunities for Jamaica's development, and stated their commitment and support for these emerging industries. When we look at these industries, what we identified were, particularly for international financial services, we believe that Jamaica might have missed the opportunity to enter the offshore financial market. However, with the restructuring of the economy, we have seen an uptick in the private equity market, alternative finance, and stock exchange products market, which are driving growth in other areas such as energy, manufacture, and construction. As it relates to medical cannabis and hemp, Jamaica has perhaps the strongest global brand for cannabis, what we call marijuana. Since the implementation of the regulatory framework, we have attracted many players, even large international investors, but mainly for cultivation, retail, and processing. However, the growth of the global market is mainly driven by the medical application, and investment in research and development and the creation of specialized research labs could advance our local industry. To point out as well, the continued classification of cannabis as a dangerous drug in international law also affects banking and trade relations, which also impacts the growth of this industry. In looking at bamboo, in the global market, we now see where bamboo is recognized as a superior substitute for wood, where it's creating laminated panels, boards, paper, cloth, etc. Industries are thriving in Asia. The US is the largest importer of bamboo products, and to point out, they are making significant efforts in increasing cultivation and acceleration of production in that area. In Jamaica, bamboo grows in the wild. We currently manufacture bamboo, charcoal, air and water filters for export market. One thing we must point out is that we should start cultivating bamboo to support the industry and to prevent environmental damage. Now, while the MIIC outlined creative industries as an emerging sector, we did not look at it, but instead we looked at cosmetics, which the recently launched manufacturing growth strategy identified as an emerging industry. We can say that our local cosmetic industry is well positioned. It has a very strong brand, and we're seeing quality products, mainly using raw materials, natural raw materials. When we look at global trends, we see where ethnic and cultural diversity is driving consumer demand for products worldwide. There's an opportunity as well for Jamaica to tap into the African American markets, as we see where African Americans, they tend to spend a larger percentage of their disposable income on beauty products when compared to other ethnic groups. Another trend is that for cosmetics, the younger market is now being captured through the use of social media influencers and online sales, versus where we saw in traditional markets the use of retail pharmaceuticals to sell their products. So our local industry does have an opportunity there to tap into the market. So far, what we can establish from our research or our working paper is that there is a need for institutional strengthening of MDAs to provide critical and affordable business development support services. We need to rationalize, modernize, and resource institutions that support industry growth. There's also need for efforts to be made, not just for the creation, but also the coordination and implementation of strategies to accelerate growth with greater emphasis on diversification. We cannot overemphasize the need for data. Data is driving growth in many industries and economies. It is important for us to review systems of data collection and secure private sector support to provide data for analysis in order for us to inform our growth process. We continue to fine-tune this paper through stakeholder consultation. The report, we know, can be strengthened through industrial value chain analysis. We can also conduct gap analysis of business supporting entities and MDAs particularly. And we can also look at areas such as logistics, renewable energy, organic agriculture, nutraceuticals, and pharmaceuticals, which we also have observed have been growing in Jamaica recently. Thank you for listening, and the work continues.